Hello guys, how's it going? Screezilla here, I hope you're all well. So, I have the P108, the Piaggio P108. Fantastic bomber, first things to say. So first of all in the video, I'm just going to go over a little bit of history of this plane. Just a brief history sort of on it. Nothing too special, but just something a little bit sort of, just so you get an idea of what this plane was about. Then I'm going to talk about it in-game. So, the Piaggio P108 was a Italian heavy bomber, obviously, 4-engine heavy bomber. Now, it was unique in being the only 4-engined heavy bomber in the service of the Regia Aeronautica. It was a very good plane by all accounts. From what I've had in game, it's also a very good plane. So, this plane first flew in 1939 and entered service in 1941. It was one of a handful of Italian combat aircraft that could match the best manufactured by the Allies. 4 versions of the P108 were designed, but only one, the P108B bomber, was produced in quantity before the armistice. The other variants included the P108A anti-shipping aircraft. I will get on to talk about that one. The P108C, which was an airliner with an extended wingspan and a remodeled fuselage capable of carrying up to 32 passengers, and the P108T transport variant, and that was designed sort of specifically for military use and was generally used after the war. It sort of ended up in the Luftwaffe as a transport aircraft. So there is also, I think there was a second variant of the P108 bomber, which we do have in game, which is the night fighter variant. But in all honesty, it's pretty bloody useless. It doesn't offer anything unique. It's just there for collectors more than anything. If you're looking for an Italian bomber, there's no point in getting the next one, the next P108, because, well, it does nothing new and it's actually a little bit worse. So the P108 was developed as a sort of better version of the P-52, which was unable to take off due to the weight of the bombs on board. It was a twin-engined bomber, meant for a heavy bomber, but it was a pretty useless bomber all in all. It was too heavy and unable to carry the bombs that were required. Hence the switch to a 4-engine variant. The designer of the aircraft was Giovanni Casageri, an experienced engineer who previously worked in the United States from 1927 to 1936. On the basis of his experience, he designed a radically new aeroplane, the P108, which was an all-metal low-wing bomber with retractable undercarriage, and it was based kind of off the B-17. I'll get to that in a little bit. Now, this won out over the Count Z1014 for the contract. So, this plane was brought into service. The first prototype flew on the 24th of November 1939. It performed extremely well in a series of tests and required only refining in only a few minor areas. But it took some time for pilots to get used to the new aircraft because it was so different to what the Italians had prior. Now, it wasn't all plain sailing for it. The P108 was delivered to a single unit, the 274A Squadron in 1941, but there were several accidents, one of them involving the son of Benito Mussolini. On the 7th of August 1941, Bruno Mussolini, commander of the 274A Squadron, was piloting one of the prototypes of the secret bomber. He flew too low and crashed into a house. The cockpit section separated from the rest of the aircraft, and although the aircraft did not catch fire, it was nevertheless totally destroyed by the impact. Bruno Mussolini died from his injuries. This kind of made the plane less than favourable in the dictator's mind. By the end of 1941, the P.108B had demonstrated just 391 flying hours. Nonetheless, the new bomber showed such promise, it was put into service. The average Italian bomber at the time cost around 2.1 million lira. The SM-79 cost 1.7 million lira, while the P-108 cost a whopping 5.2 million. This would put the smaller tri-engine bomber in a more favourable stint, you'd think. However, the P-108 had one major advantage, and that was the capability of flying over 1,100 kilometres, around 700 to 750 miles, with a payload of 3,500 kilograms, almost 8,000 pounds of bombs. This estimated efficiency was compared to a group of 26 SM-79s, covering only 1,000 kilometres, around 620 miles, with only a meagre 1,000 kilogram payload. The total of each group of aircraft required was the same at 46.8 and, well, pretty much the same, 46.8 and 45.6 million lira respectively. But only 54 crews were required for the P-108 compared to 130 crews for the SM-79, which made this plane much more favourable. It meant this plane was much better for money for value. The P-108B-2, which was the revised version, was a night bomber, and it removed the nose turret. The speed gain was minimal, only 10 kilometers per hour, due to the weight reduction and a more aerodynamic nose. In all honesty, in game, it's not worth it. The P-108 had an all-metal frame made of durabilium, and it had a crew of 8. It was very robust, and it could pull up to 6 Gs. Its tolerance was 6 Gs in a turn. This makes this plane extremely good at turning. You don't snap your wings. It's very good in that regard. The front nose, as you can see, we'll just switch to manual view there, it's very similar to the Lancaster. It has a similar look to the Lancaster, really, with the nose turret being above the bomb sight, which means you don't have that, don't have the ability to aim down with it. So it does make a bit of an issue. However, you do have a belly gun on this, and it does go up and down. It's fantastic to watch, as well as these very cool wing-mounted 50 cals, which are operated by the two guys in these two little bubbles. Now, these are radio control operated. Little wires and cables go to these guys, and they aim there. You also have two waist-mounted gunners with 7.7mm guns. Now, I'm just going to switch to free view here, because we're coming up on our bomb target. Now, in this game, we had two Kingfishers, and they took out the two bases. We are flying in a squadron, me and Mr. Plebbles, sorry. I'm going to get flack for that when I call them Plebbles, the pleb that he is. So there's only two of us. Now, we have a payload of 34 100 kilogram bombs on us. So he's used 8. I believe he used a little bit more. I think he used 10 on the base, but you only need 8 of those 100 kilogram bombs to do damage. So that means we have a lot of bombs on board, but they're only 100 kilogram bombs. So we're coming up on the airfield for a bomb run. Now, the plane had a very good engine as well. It was very similar to the where am I? It was equipped with the air-cooled 18-cylinder radial engines, which did suffer a bit from reliability problems, but produced over 1,000 kilowatts, 1,350 horsepower at 3,000 meters, almost 10,000 feet. It gave it very decent reliability. Now, the engines were versions of the Nomron 9K, made under license in Italy, themselves being a license of the Bristol Jupiters. So they were pretty much Bristol Jupiter engines, so they were decent engines. It had self-sealing fuel tanks as well, carried an awful lot of fuel on board. It also had a very good practical sealing. Now, if you just saw there, Plubbles just got a very nice little surprise there on that guy. You can see that this B-24, I think it was a B-34 was landing, and just in that very narrow area, he got a big surprise. So, Plubbles was very happy about that. He got a kill as well as destroying a base. So, we managed to take out the base and get a kill. All in all, a good game for the Bombers. As you can see, we were pretty... we were in a poor spot as we only had bombers left on our team. We had one single fighter, whereas they had a few fighters left. We won the game there. Now we're just going to switch to another video. But while we're doing that, we're just going to go to a... we're just going to look at the plane in the hangar. Now, as you can see, it's a relatively big plane. It does have armour, which is very useful. So your pilot does have some decent armour around him. But plate armour on the bottom, as well as some armour at the front as well. So head on, you're less likely to die. But it typical of bombers, there's very little protection. But you do have the two pilots, so that does make it a little bit easier. Your waist gunners also have some protection with 8mm steel armour. X-ray. You can see the crew. We have two gunners here for these guns here, which are your 50 cals. We also have a front-mounted 50 cal, as well as a 50 cal at our belly gun. There is no tail gun in this plane. So this section here, there's no protection, which does make it a little bit tricky. However, these guns have a very good arc of fire, and the 50 cals work very well. With your waist gunners, you only have 7.7mm machine guns, so they're not great, but they do offer some form of protection. Now, modifications for this plane, your bomb load. Now, bombs on this plane, you start off with the 50kg bombs, which allow you to take out two bases. One thing with the Italian planes are the bombs. They're very good bombs. They have a very high yield of TNT explosives. So as you can see, with the 50kg bombs, which have a 58kg mass, you've got 25kg of explosives. The 100kg bombs have 50kg of explosives. The 250s are a bit of a letdown with only 125kg, but the 500s are very good with 220kg. This makes the 500 comparable to the American 1,000-pound bomb, basically. You only need 3 of these to take out a base at your tier level. So this means you have enough bombs to take out 2 bases, as well as 1 remaining. However, the interesting thing is with your 100kg bombs, you actually have enough to take out all 3 bases, as well as a fair few remaining for the airfield. So it is kind of... It sounds strange, but it's more effective to take the 100kg bombs if you're good at aiming your bombs. The other thing with this plane is you get torpedoes. You get the 45cm torpedo, the F200 450s. Now you can take up to 3 of these torpedoes. Very handy, but they have got a very slow drop speed and very low drop altitude, which does make them tricky to use. But they are still very handy. The plane has the 50 cal and the 7.7mm. Now with the universal rounds, you have armor-piercing incendiary tracer and armor-piercing incendiary bullets. Universal on the 7.7, you have the tracer and incendiary. The armor-piercing bullets simply have tracer and armor piercing, so I do recommend taking universal on both of these. The default does have an incendiary round to it though, so that is very useful, but you are better off with universal rounds for these planes. So let's hop into another battle here. As you can see, my very well named replay files there, so I know what I'm doing. Now the P.108 was also a very speedy aircraft. It had a very good speed rating to it. Let's just get forward a little bit.
Pilots, your mission is to destroy the enemy's ground equipment and bases.
It had a very good speed rating to it. So, could reach speeds of up to 420 kilometers per hour, 260 miles per hour at 4,300 meters. Now, it was much slower than the Allied bombers at the time, of course. Here we are just looking at the cockpit as well. Interesting thing are the flares. You do have flares on your bomber pilots now in the Italian trees, which is very cool. This plane is very pretty to look at. Okay, back to the performance. So the speed was, as I said, it wasn't the fastest plane, but the slow speed was kind of an advantage for AAA fire because they were so slow, people would basically aim a bit too far ahead of them. Now, it had a very good bomb load, as I said. It was comparable to things like the B-17 in its sort of role, and it did work very well. Now, it did have a few operational uses as well. Operational history was pretty limited, mainly at Gibraltar, Africa and Algeria and Sicily. So it didn't have a huge effect on the war, but it did cause some trouble. The plane was regarded well by its crews, but it did suffer many losses, simply due to the fact that the defensive armament is not greatly positioned. They had a lot of problems with both Bellfighters as well as the Mosquito night fighter as well. That was the main plane that caused this plane trouble, simply because they were much faster and had better armour, better armaments on them. The final action of this plane took place over Sicily when they flew 12 sorties against the invading forces between the 11th and 22nd of July. They lost 2 aircraft completely, and 2 others were badly damaged, mainly by the aforementioned Bullfighter and Mosquito. Unfortunately, it didn't have a great finish, as only 1 ship was damaged by the bombers at this time. This closed the career of the P-108. The last 24 P-108s ordered, the last of the 24 was ordered was delivered in August. Of these 6 aircraft, 6 were lost to enemy action over Algeria and Sicily. 4 to accidents, including Bruno Mussolini, and 3 forced down due to forced landings. As I said, they didn't have a great military history, unfortunately, but they did do a relatively good job for what they had. If this plane had kept developing, it would have been a pretty vicious beast. It was a very capable bomber, but unfortunately, with the leadership at the time and the Italian sort of thought process, it did suffer greatly. The P-108 ended its life as a transport aircraft, mainly on the East German front. They were evacuating troops with this. It could carry up to 100 troops at a time, which you can imagine would have been very cramped, not very fun. The P.108 transport aircraft and civilian aircraft proved to be much more reliable than the bombers. They were pretty much successful and kept flying until the end of the war in German hands. And the Germans did not mind it at all. One of the interesting things I did find when I was looking up this plane is there's a photograph of the Allied troops chatting to one of the Italian pilots of this plane. There's one Lieutenant Harris, DFC, and he comes from Adelaide, which it's kind of nice to see photographs of people from my town. It's not very often I get to see them, but interesting nonetheless, for me alone. So let's talk about this plane as it is in the game. So you've got 5 12.7mm 50 cals on it, 5-inch guns on it, 2 7.7mm 303s, and it's capable of carrying up to 3,400 kilograms of bombs. So that's in-game. In real life it could carry a little bit more, but not much. So it's pretty good. At its BR of 3.3, you're one of the biggest bombers in that realm, which does help immensely. If you're up-tiered, it can be a little bit troublesome, but this plane takes a really good beating. I found I've been able to carry on after being hit, strafed by Yak 3s, LA 7s, things like that. Planes that really do cause some damage. I think I even got hit by a Yak 7T and survived. It's very good at killing planes as well. They will of course get used to this plane and it will be a bit trickier. It's comparable to the P.8 really. It's very decent at holding off enemy attacks. It's very decent at taking a beating. But unlike the P.8, this has a much better payload. I would say at the BR this has the best payload of any plane. It's certainly better than things like the B-24. Yeah, B-24. No, B-24? Sorry, my brain is a little bit unlit today. It's certainly better than the Americans at this tier, and even the British bombers as well. I'm thinking 3.3, I think you have got the Halifax maybe you'll be coming up against, which is a very good bomber in its own right, but this still has much better defensive armament than the British planes. Bombing, this plane is highly accurate, even with the 100 kilogram bombs. Now this was testing for me, so I was dropping a little bit more than I needed to. I found out you only need to drop 8 bombs to kill a base. Because you're at the lower BR rating, you can get away with 8 to 10 100 kilogram bombs and it will absolutely decimate the base, which is very handy. So you can easily take out 3 bases with this plane if you get your bomb drops right. The tricky part is dropping those bombs. As you see, by dropping the group bombing, it comes a bit too quickly. Would be nice if we could set an amount that we drop. So here are our bombs on target. They're all grouped really lovely as well. So absolutely takes that base out with no trouble at all. Now, myself and Clevels have been flying this plane a little bit, and as I said, I found it to be very, very good. It does have a few drawbacks, of course. It is very slow. It's very visible. Sorry, excuse me. those are really the only drawbacks I can come up with, though. It does have a very limited arc of fire. Frontally, this plane is very poorly armed. So if somebody comes in for a front strafe, you're pretty much buggered. However, having that belly gunner really does make a difference. Although you've only got single guns in the front and the belly, they do help a fair bit. And those wing-mounted 50 cals, just there on the wing, you can see them both, they've got a fantastic arc of fire, so you can really punish enemies that sit on your 6. And generally at this BR, people do that. They're used to bombers like Wellingtons, things like that, that you can just sit on the 6 for days, take them out with ease. This plane flies very well too. It's a very agile plane for its size, and I'll come on to that a bit when I talk about the P108A with its big 102mm gun, even though Gaijin have got that plane completely wrong. I won't get into it right now. But it is really, really good, and it's very agile. It has a very high G tolerance too, so it's very handy in that regard. So, all in all, this plane is fantastic. I really do love it. It's one of my favourite bombers that I've flown. Its BR rating feels right. It doesn't feel too OP. 3 of these can absolutely end a game. It's a bit like a TU-4 or a B-29. You know, if you've got 3 of these in the game, you've got to take them out quick, because they will end a game. The torpedoes, not so great. As a torpedo bomber, this plane is not very good. You do struggle a fair bit, which is pretty sad. Now, as you see here, I think I'm taking out all the bases in this run. Oh no, Plebbles has taken out one of the bases. I forgot what I dropped. So I was looking at the wrong bit on my screen. So as you see there, I dropped all my bombs bar 4. I could have kept a couple more in reserve. I think I could have had about, as I said, I've dropped 4 too many on the bases. But it's better to be safe than sorry. We still have enough TNT to take out the airfield if needed. So that is, well, just about enough TNT, I think. I'm trying to think now if we did actually do it. We were very close to it anyway. Now, this game ends with one of the sort of most annoying bomber traits in the game. There's the B-25 going into land, and he's going to sit on his airfield and not move. Which is very... well, no, actually, no, he doesn't. There's another B-25 on the airfield that's just sitting there AFK pretty much. And it's people like that that give bombers a very bad name. And it does frustrate me a fair amount. So, let's just have a little bit of a look at this plane. So, Plubbles over there has got a fair load of bombs left. Let's just quickly hop to him. As you see, he's over the airfield now, and he's dropped his bombs out. We're at a slightly poor angle of attack, but he doesn't get a great hit on the airfield either. He is using the 50kg bombs though, I believe. I think he only had the 50kg on board, so we are a bit of a disadvantage. If both planes have the 100kg though, then it really does make a difference. Now I'm going to switch to free view here and come down to the airfield. Now, on the airfield is a... I wonder if he's actually there or if he is going into land. I believe... there he is, no. There is this guy AFK, basically just sitting there in the B-25 waiting to run out the game. He's going to get a very nasty surprise, I imagine. So luckily I had those 4 bombs in reserve. You can tell what's going to happen here. So this plane all in all is fantastic as a bomber. It's much better than the B-25. in payload. It's much better than the Halifax page in defensive armaments. It's much better than the P.8 in payload and manoeuvrability. This plane is very agile as well, and that's one of the things I noticed most about it, is its agility. It's fantastic in its ability to move. It's got a really nice feeling to it. So we've got a big old bomber flying above us, and this guy's sitting there just la-da-da-da, waiting for tickets to run down, not wanting to fight, being very passive. And as I said, I'm pretty sure he's going to have a nasty surprise in a few moments. Would I recommend this plane? 100%. If you're looking for a fun mid to low tier bomber, this is the plane to have. This was the last guy on the enemy team as well. Interestingly, he's lost one pilot, but only one. His engines are unharmed by those bombs, but the rest of his plane is pretty wrecked. I don't see him taking off anytime soon. It's kind of head scratching sometimes, damaging in this game, because you just sort of think, well, how the hell does that work? But this guy got a very nasty surprise. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Just quickly, before the end of this video, I am going to do a brief talk on the 108A. Now, the 108A is the 102mm gunned version. Now, I'm going to do a bit of a game video of this one at some stage, because boy is this thing fun. We took it out for a bit of testing the other night, and I took out a well, I'm going to have to actually look at the Russian tech tree because Russian tanks have too many numbers. The T-55A with it. So let's just quickly look at that. So the T-55A is relatively well armoured, as you can see. But the thing is, this section here is not. And this plane is ridiculous. As you can see, this tank is very good, but flying at this sort of angle, it has very low armour thickness. Even at the top here, it's only got 120mm of armour. Only 120mm, I say. Like, that's a small amount. The P108A, with the bigger gun on it. Default ammo. So the armour piercing has 140mm from 10 meters. It has 126mm from 500 meters. It is ludicrous. This thing is deadly. Now, the armor piercing has 80 grams of TNT on board. The explosive round has 690 grams of TNT on board. That is more than some tanks carry for their rounds. This thing is silly fun. It's a plane that you wouldn't take out much, but when you do, you're going to have fun with it. One of the annoying things, though, is due to the way that ships are modelled in this game, you don't actually have the ability to take out destroyers, which is what this ship was designed for. So that is very frustrating. Hopefully when Knights of the Sea comes around, they will do some tweaks to AI ships, so you can damage them and sink them with guns, because at the moment they're sort of like a hit point based system, and it is very frustrating, because a lot of your shells just pass straight through the ship. If you fire at the waterline towards the engine, where you would basically be getting a citadel hit, on the ship's citadel, you know, the mass for the boilers and stuff like that, one of these rounds going through hitting that engine would cause a lot of damage, but in game it doesn't really happen. For ground targets, this thing is ludicrously fun. You can take out the heavy tank, the AI heavy tanks with this thing with no trouble at all. The gun has very little recoil as well, so you don't lose too much speed. The plane is very good at low altitude. you also have these fantastic defensive guns on it. So you have the belly gun, you have the wing guns, and you also have the waist gunners too. Head on, you can absolutely kill people with this gun. It is very silly when it happens. Not very easy, but when you do get that hit, that is the end of them. It's a bit like the Duck in that respect, but on steroids. So all in all, this plane is absolutely fantastic. I do wonder though if you can get ammo racked with it because of this ridiculous 50 rounds of stupidly large ammunition on it, much like a tank would. If you get hit in that section, does your whole plane explode? I've not yet seen it happen, but I would be interested to see if it does. You've got your gunner here who reloads it and rearms it. The interesting thing about this gun is it was going to be I think it was a 12 round autocannon, so it would have 12 in the magazine, and then be reloaded, of course. The annoying thing for me though is the way that Gaijin have done this plane, because it's got a fixed mounted nose gun, which the plane did not have. So the P108A, it was not going to have a fixed mounted gun. It was actually going to have a computer guided system, an analog computer. So basically you could range find, get it set, and fire. If we switch back to the X-ray, you can see here that there's actually room for it to move a little bit. And what they were going to do is actually have the gun on a pivot so it could be moved by about 10 degrees, I think it was. Not much, but a little bit. And when you're at altitude, that does make a huge difference. So, you know, at sort of a kilometre, that 10 degrees of aiming, you know, gives you a huge distance of aiming with it. So this gun was originally going to be aimable. Now in War Thunder we don't have that, it's just in a fixed position, which does negatively affect it because you have to aim the plane to where you want to fire. The other thing is you have to fire this gun in cockpit view really to get good shots. Firing from behind the plane you tend to miss quite a lot. It is much easier in the cockpit view. The other annoying thing for me is the fact that it doesn't have torpedoes. Now the original design of this plane was to carry 90 rounds. With the 50 round configuration, it would carry 3 standard torpedoes or 2 guided torpedoes, radio guided torpedoes, which were much heavier. So this plane should have torpedoes as well as this gun. I do hope that Gaijin fix this or add a second variant of this plane with those torpedoes on board, because it would make this plane an unstoppable Goliath. It's already a fun plane, but with those extra torpedoes on board it will just be silly. Oh, wrong button. As I said, there is the 108B Series 2, which is the night fighter variant, which, as you see, it's just got a cover over the top here, which removes the nose turret. There is no other differences. The other annoying thing is it doesn't have any difference in payload. So you don't get any extra bombs. It would be nice if maybe you got one extra bomb in the 250 to 500 kilogram range, because removing that extra weight gives you a little bit more option for that. So it would be worth it possibly if you had one extra bomb. In all honesty though, this plane is not worth getting unless you're a serious collector of bombers. Until they get extra planes, until they get a jet bomber or something like that, there's no point in researching this. It's just a waste of time, simply because there's no discernible difference between the two of them. And in all honesty, the added BR of it being a 3.7 plane will negatively affect the plane too. As you can see, the speed difference is minimal. There is very minimal gain for a plane that loses a gun, and as a bomber pilot you need an extra gun on board. So stick with the 108B Series 1, don't worry about the Series 2, it's not worth it. Definitely get the A, because that thing is just silly fun. So at 3.3, other bombers that you sort of have are things like the Ki-49, which have much less payload. You get a single 800 kilogram bomb on this plane, or 4 250 kilograms, which have much less yield for their TNT. As you see, it's only a 95 kilogram yield for their TNT, while the if I get to the right plane, like I should have done. Whereas the 250s on this plane have 125 kilograms of TNT. It's a huge difference there. The British, you've got the Wellington. So the Halifax is a 4.0, sorry. So it is the Wellingtons. And Wellingtons have a very poor carrying capability. You've got the 6 250-pound bombs, which only have 37 kilograms of explosives on board, and you've got the 1,000 pounders. Now this is enough to take out a base and a little bit of another, but that's it. You also get the huge barrel bomb, but in all honesty, you've not got nearly the same capability of the Italian bomber. The other thing, of course, is the weapon layout as well. The 7.7mm Brownings are absolutely pathetic, so it really does make a difference. Now, at 3.7, you will come up with Halifaxes, but you won't be fighting things. You won't be fighting against bombers like the Sterling. So, you know, it really does make a huge difference. For the Russians, what an idiot I am. 3.3, as I said, P8 for the top tier, but again, the bomb load on it is meager in comparison. You have the 4 1,000 kilogram bombs, which can take out 2 bases, the 6 500 kilogram bombs, which can take out 2 bases. You know, it's not nearly the same capability. The YR2, things like that, again, very poor payload. PE2s, again, very poor payload. IL4, well, again, you know, at 3.0 it's a little bit lower in battle rating, but the payload capability of it is much less. You can barely take out a single base with this thing. So it really makes a difference there. Germany, of course, I have the SM79s in my tree because I've unlocked them already. That's another kettle of fish we'll get into. The BV238 is the main thing you'll be having with you. That thing does have a fairly decent payload. 250 kilogram bombs with 125 kilogram explosive mass, and this thing can sort of it carries a similar capability as the P108. It's a bit better in regards to the bomb load, but you know, it has that issue of being a seaplane. It's very slow, very sluggish, and it doesn't have the same maneuverability. Also, it's premium as well. Non-premiums, the Hangar 111. Again, you look at the payload of that, it can take out a single base, and that's all you're going to be able to do with it. So it really does make a difference there. The Condor, the Focke-Wulf 2000 as well, if you think about the payload on the Italian 4-engine bomber, this has a very meagre payload again of only sort of 2,000 kilogram bombs. The best payload you can go is the two 1,000 kilogram bombs and the 2 500 kilogram bombs, which allow you to take out sort of 2 bases, but it's still very sluggish. It's not as maneuverable, and it does not have anywhere near the same capability. The Americans, as I said, the B-25s are probably the closest thing, which have the 4 1,000 pound bombs on, the 3 1,000 pound bombs on board. You can take out a base with these at your BR, but that's it. Actually, yeah, you can still take out a base, I think, because they've lowered the base health a little bit for these planes. But it has to be in the lower BR to be able to take out that base. If it gets up-tiered, then it does struggle. You'll be coming up against things like the where is it? B-34 as well, in lower tiered games. which as you can see just has nothing near the same payload capability. So at 3.3, this plane is just the mother of all planes for payloads. At its tier, if you're not up tiered, there is nothing that comes even close to you, other than, of course, the BV. When you're down tiered, this thing is an absolute beast. When you're up tiered, it's still very good. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, found it interesting and useful for you. I will be making a video on bombing bases soon, that will come out very shortly. So I do hope you look forward to that. If you have any questions, please post them below. I have got a few already in the file, ready to go. But I will try and answer all your questions if you have them. And I'll also try and give you a guide of all the different nations, all the different bombs, all what it means, and what you have to do to take out a base. Okay guys, have a fantastic day. Much love to you all, and I'll see you next time. This is Screezer out. Bye bye.